Curiosity is the beginning of every great act of thought. It's not a luxury of the intelligent or a pastime for the idle. It's the driving force behind every leap of progress the human mind has ever made. Curiosity transforms the ordinary into the extraordinary, the static into the dynamic. It's not content with surface appearances. It wants to look underneath, to peel back layers until the truth stands bare. Curiosity isn't satisfied by answers. It uses them as fuel to create new questions. Every time you satisfy curiosity, it doesn't quiet down. It multiplies. It's an expanding fire that feeds on its own discoveries. Most people think intelligence is measured by what you know. But real intelligence begins with what you don't know, and more importantly, with how badly you want to find out. The curious mind doesn't just collect facts. It builds connections. It doesn't memorize, it experiments. It doesn't fear confusion. It feeds on it. The moment you ask why, instead of accepting something as given, your brain switches modes. It stops being a storage device and becomes an engine of discovery. That single word, why, has built civilizations, toppled dogmas, and opened the universe. When curiosity awakens, even the simplest things become profound. The dripping of a faucet is no longer a noise, it's a rhythm to be measured. A falling leaf is not decoration. It's a question about gravity and air. The curious mind sees hidden patterns where others see random clutter. It notices what doesn't fit, what's slightly off, what could be otherwise. That's the start of insight, noticing that something doesn't make sense and refusing to let it go until it does. Children live in this state naturally. They poke, prod, ask endlessly, and break things open just to see what's inside. They don't need to be told to learn. Learning is their form of play. Watch a child with a toy before they enjoy it. They want to understand it. They want to see how the wheel turns, how the light flashes, how the sound appears. That is pure curiosity in action. Learning not because they have to, but because they must know. Somewhere along the way, as we grow up, this instinct gets subdued. School rewards correct answers, not interesting questions. Work rewards efficiency, not wonder. Society subtly teaches that asking too many questions is annoying, that uncertainty is weakness. And so slowly, curiosity dims. Not because it disappears, but because it's buried under layers of expectation and fear of looking foolish. Yet curiosity never truly dies. It's the mind's most primal instinct, sitting quietly beneath the noise of daily life, waiting for permission to resurface. The moment you allow yourself to wonder again, to ask without shame, to explore without agenda, you reconnect with the original power source of learning. The human brain is designed to be curious. It's wired to seek novelty, to chase patterns, to detect inconsistencies. When curiosity is engaged, the brain releases dopamine, the same chemical responsible for pleasure and motivation. That's why discovering something new feels like a thrill. It's not metaphorical excitement, it's biological reward. Curiosity literally energizes the mind. And this energy doesn't just make you smarter, it makes you more alive. When you're curious, time seems to stretch. A simple walk becomes an investigation. A conversation becomes an experiment. Even boredom transforms into opportunity, because every moment hides a question. If you look closely enough, the person who maintains curiosity never truly grows old. They may age, but their mind remains in motion, always reaching, always expanding. Curiosity also protects you from the most dangerous illusion, the illusion of understanding. Thinking you know something is the fastest way to stop learning. When you say, "I know how this works," your brain shuts the door. But when you say, "I think I know, but let me check," you keep it open. The difference is subtle but immense. The curious person treats knowledge as a hypothesis, not a possession. They test it, challenge it, and reshape it. That's why they keep learning long after others have stopped. There's also a quiet bravery in curiosity. To ask a real question is to admit that you don't know. It's an act of humility, but also of courage. Most people avoid that vulnerability. They'd rather pretend to know than risk looking ignorant. But curiosity thrives on that risk. It's not afraid of uncertainty, it wants it. It's in uncertainty that discovery hides. When you embrace curiosity fully, you learn to be comfortable not knowing. You stop seeking safety and answers and start finding excitement and exploration. Curiosity doesn't follow straight lines, it meanders. You start wondering why the sky is blue and end up studying the scattering of light, quantum mechanics, or the structure of perception itself. That wandering path is not distraction, it's the natural course of thought. The mind explores by branching out, connecting unexpected dots. Each question is a doorway that leads to 10 more. The curious mind isn't impatient to reach an end. It enjoys the infinite branching of the journey itself. But curiosity isn't only intellectual, it's emotional. It's tied to empathy, to the ability to understand others. When you're curious about people, you listen more deeply, ask better questions, and notice subtle patterns in behavior. You begin to see that everyone's mind is a world of its own, full of reasons and contradictions. Curiosity about others breaks down judgment. It replaces the quick conclusion with the deeper question, why does this person think this way? That question doesn't just make you wiser, it makes you human. The mind fueled by curiosity is like a scientist and an artist combined. It observes, but it also imagines. It studies facts, but it also dreams about what could be. Curiosity bridges the gap between logic and creativity because it feeds both sides. You can't innovate without curiosity. Every invention, from the wheel to the computer, began as someone's refusal to accept the world as it was. The statement, "What if?" is the anthem of progress. And curiosity is not something that requires tools or resources. You don't need a laboratory to wonder. You can practice it anywhere, waiting for a bus, staring at a glass of water, reading a sentence that doesn't quite make sense. The key is not the environment, but the attitude. The attitude that says, there's something here to learn if I pay attention. The greatest discoveries in history often began with ordinary observations. An apple falling, a shadow moving, a sound echoing strangely. The difference is that a curious mind notices what others overlook and refuses to move on until the question is answered. In moments of confusion, curiosity acts as a compass. When you don't understand something, the worst response is frustration. The best is fascination. Frustration shuts the mind down. Fascination keeps it alive. When you train yourself to respond to confusion with curiosity, you turn every obstacle into an invitation. Instead of thinking, this is too hard, you begin to think, what am I missing? That single shift transforms the learning process. Suddenly, problems are no longer walls. They are doors. The most fascinating thing about curiosity is that it doesn't require external motivation. Once ignited, it sustains itself. Every discovery fuels the next. The more you learn, the more you realize how much there is left to explore. Knowledge doesn't satisfy curiosity. It expands it. It's like a horizon that keeps receding no matter how far you travel. That's why truly curious people never reach an endpoint. Their joy isn't in completion, but in continuation. Curiosity also refines perception. When you're curious, you don't just look, you observe. You notice the tiny details, the anomalies, the slight variations that others miss. You begin to see patterns behind chaos, connections behind coincidence. This heightened awareness sharpens intuition, deepens reasoning, and enhances creativity. Curiosity trains the mind to see not just what is, but what could be. The brain's hidden power is unlocked through this process because curiosity builds neural flexibility. Every time you ask a question and pursue an answer, you form new pathways between neurons. Each pathway strengthens your ability to think, remember, and create. Over time, your mind becomes a dynamic web of connections rather than a static archive of facts. This is how curiosity transforms intelligence from something you have into something you use. To live curiously is to live awake. It means stepping out of autopilot, noticing the patterns of your own thoughts, questioning your assumptions, and seeing the familiar with new eyes. When you cultivate curiosity deliberately, the world becomes endlessly interesting. There are no dull moments, only unexamined ones. The spark that once drove you to ask, to test, to play as a child can be reignited at any moment. You only have to allow it. Curiosity, once rekindled, doesn't ask for permission. It disrupts comfort, disturbs certainty, and demands exploration. It's restless, but not reckless. It's the gentle rebellion of the mind against stagnation. The curious person doesn't settle for what's known. They dance with what's possible. They find wonder in the grain of sand and mystery in the motion of stars. They live in constant conversation with the unknown, not seeking to conquer it but to understand it just a little better than before. To be curious is to be alive to the patterns of reality, to the pulse of existence itself. It's the difference between walking through life with eyes open or shut. Every person is born curious, but only those who keep that spark alive continue to grow beyond their limits. Curiosity is the engine. It turns ignorance into insight, observation into understanding, and confusion into creation. It's the quiet fire that keeps the human mind forever reaching toward the unknown. The mind grows sharper not when it passively absorbs, but when it struggles to explain. The act of putting thoughts into clear, simple words forces the brain to organize chaos into coherence. When you try to explain something, even to yourself, you expose the holes in your understanding. Every time you stumble while explaining, your brain is revealing where it's confused. That moment of friction is gold. It's not failure, it's the point where real learning begins. Explaining transforms vague familiarity into solid comprehension. You may think you understand an idea until you try to teach it. Suddenly, you realize your grasp is partial, that you've been skating on the surface. This realization compels the mind to rebuild knowledge from the ground up. When you simplify complex ideas into language even a child could understand, you're not dumbing them down, you're refining your grasp to its purest form. Simplicity is proof of mastery, not ignorance. This process works because the brain rewires itself through articulation. Speaking or writing about an idea engages multiple neural networks at once. Conceptual, linguistic, emotional, and in that synchronization, understanding deepens. When you explain something, you are not just transferring information, you are building internal structure. You are teaching your mind how to think more clearly. The paradox is beautiful. The best way to learn is to teach, even when you have no student. In explaining to others, or to the silence around you, you reveal the hidden architecture of your own understanding. Ignorance is not the absence of knowledge. It is the starting point of learning. The moment you admit you don't know something, your brain becomes receptive, alive and searching. Most people pretend to know because they fear the discomfort of uncertainty. But that pretense locks the door to real understanding. The greatest mental power comes from the courage to stand in front of a mystery and say, "I don't understand this yet." That simple word, "yet," transforms ignorance from a weakness into an invitation. When you deny your ignorance, you deny your growth. The illusion of knowledge is far more dangerous than the lack of it. People who cling to the comfort of appearing smart stop asking questions, and without questions, the mind starves. True thinkers thrive on confusion because they recognize it as the raw material of insight. To be confused is to be on the edge of discovery. It is the tension before clarity, the moment before light breaks through. Embracing ignorance also removes the ego from learning. It lets you observe without defending, listen without filtering, and explore without bias. It gives your brain permission to take risks, to fail, to rebuild. Each time you say, "I don't know," you clear mental clutter and make room for truth. The mind that humbly acknowledges its gaps gains the strength to fill them. Ignorance, when accepted honestly, becomes the fuel for curiosity, the foundation of wisdom and the most honest position a thinker can ever take. The most powerful minds treat problems not as obstacles but as playgrounds. When you approach a problem with a sense of play, fear dissolves and creativity takes the lead. The brain works differently when it is playing. It becomes flexible, imaginative, and unrestrained by the pressure to be right. Solving something out of curiosity rather than duty opens doors that effort alone cannot. The mind in play explores possibilities that logic alone might reject. It experiments, breaks patterns, and tests ideas just to see what happens. Playfulness invites discovery because it removes the emotional weight of failure. When you play, you don't mind being wrong. You simply try again, change the angle, twist the idea. That freedom releases hidden energy from the subconscious, where unexpected connections are made. Many of the greatest insights emerge not from seriousness, but from the lightness of experimentation. The scientist who doodles on a napkin, the student who jokes with equations, the thinker who turns confusion into a game, all are using the same principle. Tension blocks creativity, play unlocks it. To play with a problem means to ask what if instead of how should I. It means to follow the thread of curiosity wherever it leads, even when it looks foolish. The playful mind is not reckless. It's bold. It doesn't seek certainty. It seeks patterns, rhythms, surprises. And in that dance with uncertainty, the brain trains itself to see beyond the obvious, transforming struggle into exploration and confusion into possibility. Understanding begins when you stop trying to swallow the whole universe in one bite. The mind can only truly grasp what it can take apart, inspect and reassemble. Every complex idea, every grand mystery is built from smaller, simpler truths waiting to be discovered. The secret is not in memorizing the vast, but in mastering the minute. When you reduce a big problem into its smallest elements, confusion turns into clarity. You begin to see how the pieces connect, how one idea leads naturally to another. The brain thrives on structure, and breaking things down is how it builds that structure from within. Many people are overwhelmed by knowledge because they try to learn in chunks too large for their minds to digest. They read, repeat, and recall, but rarely understand. Real learning happens when you slow down enough to isolate one idea and ask, what does this really mean? Then you test it. You see how it behaves in different situations and how it relates to other truths you already know. This process doesn't just simplify, it solidifies. Each small truth you uncover becomes a brick in the architecture of understanding. Breaking things down also humbles the ego. It reminds you that mastery is not achieved through leaps of intellect, but through patience, observation, and iteration. The beauty of this approach lies in its universality. Whether it's physics, art, or human behavior, everything can be understood piece by piece. The mind trained to dissect complexity gains the rare power to rebuild it in forms clearer, stronger, and infinitely more elegant. No idea, no matter how beautiful or convincing, holds any real power until it is tested against reality. The mind has an endless ability to imagine, to believe, to construct theories that sound perfect, but the universe doesn't care about what sounds perfect. It only responds to what is. Reality is the great filter that separates truth from illusion. When you confront it directly, without bias or expectation, you begin to see how things actually work instead of how you wish they would. This confrontation is often uncomfortable because it destroys comforting assumptions, yet that destruction is precisely what builds genuine understanding. Every question finds its real answer, not in speculation but in observation. When you test your ideas against the world, the feedback you receive, whether success or failure, is the most honest teacher you will ever have. The experiment doesn't lie, the data doesn't flatter, and the outcome doesn't care who you are. The humility to accept what reality reveals, even when it contradicts your clever theories, marks the difference between intelligence and wisdom. To learn from reality is to train your mind to listen to nature itself. Reality teaches through evidence, not authority. It rewards curiosity and punishes arrogance. When you anchor your thinking in what can be observed, measured, and verified, you give your brain a foundation that no opinion can shake. The mind grows sharp when it faces the truth directly, and every test, every contradiction, every surprising result becomes a conversation with the universe itself. The secret to unlocking hidden brain power has never been buried in complicated formulas or mystical rituals. It lies in the way you engage with the world. The mind is not a static vessel waiting to be filled. It's a living instrument, tuned by curiosity, sharpened by questioning, and illuminated by experience. Every time you wonder, test, fail, and try again, you are sculpting the architecture of your own intelligence. The process is not linear. It's alive, unpredictable, and deeply personal. What seems like confusion today becomes clarity tomorrow, and what feels impossible now becomes intuitive once the layers of illusion are peeled away. The hidden power of the brain is not about thinking harder, it's about thinking differently. It emerges when you stop memorizing and start exploring. When you treat every puzzle as an experiment and every mistake as data. The more you interact with reality, the more your mind learns to see patterns beneath the noise, to notice what others overlook, to connect ideas across distances of thought. This is how intelligence evolves, not by collecting facts, but by refining perception. Each discovery, no matter how small, trains the mind to trust its own reasoning over authority. It teaches you that knowledge is not something you have, but something you do. The hidden power you seek is already awake inside you, waiting for permission to move, to question, to build, to break, to rebuild again. The moment you begin to truly observe, the moment you dare to ask why, that power begins to unfold.